Okay, all right. So, welcome everyone. This is our first edition of the Biology Journal Club. And the Biology Journal Club, so when I was in university, what we did was we had a Biology Journal Club. It was required in every class that we had. And basically, we had to read a paper, like an academic paper beforehand, and then we'd show up to class and then discuss the paper. We'd go through the figures, we'd go through why this was done, the context of why it was done. And it was kind of eye-opening because we got to examine really, really intense quality research. But at the same time, I realized that this stuff is not really communicated to people that well every day. And even if you look at the title of today's paper, it's on the front right here. Oh wait, there it is. A ketogenic diet improves mitochondrial biogenesis and bioenergetics via the PGC1 alpha SIRT3 UCP2 axis. That's a mouthful, and that's not exactly accessible, right? Would you guys agree? You could put yes or no in the paper. Only if you really have a background in biology do people really understand these things and know how to apply it. And so basically the goal of today, or the goal of the Biology Journal Club is to kind of shed light on papers that are basically in another language. And here, I'm your translator, so that's what we're doing. So my background is in molecular biology. I did neuroscience for my master's. I was going to do a PhD, but I'm working here. Still in talks, or still have plans for a PhD maybe in the future. Anyway, so today's paper, we're going to be talking about the ketogenic diet, and ignore the rest of the title. Just keep in mind, how does the ketogenic diet improve mitochondrial function? All right. So yes, what is the Biology Journal Club? I just answered that question. Here is some of the goals for today, and I hope you all walk away with these answered. Wait, can I minimize this? There. So the first is to give a background on the ketogenic diet, why it's more than a fad, why it actually originated from medicine. It didn't actually originate as a weight loss, diet. Number two, why did authors do this research, right? Why is there pursuit of this field, right? Especially, this is a diet after all, and you'd think, oh, the pharmaceutical companies would like to research something that would make them money. Well, not necessarily. This research is done for the sake of health, and it's very, very interesting. How did they do this research? And that's kind of exciting. I don't know how excited you guys are about that, but that's going to be fun. And then the last question is, what were the main findings of the research? What can we draw from this paper in all its density and all the data that the authors have given, which is good quality? This is, after all, peer reviewed. What can we get from this? So here's just a screenshot of the paper. Already you can see there's tons and tons of acronyms there that are very confusing. We're not going to be going in depth about those acronyms, what they mean. We're just going to be focusing on the big picture. All right. We're going to be focusing on two acronyms, but I think they're kind of easy, and then I'll explain what they are and what they mean, etc. Okay. Okay. So here we go. So before I start anything, you should keep in mind that the biologists that did this research, they did research on brain cells. And there's a very important reason why they did, or that why they used brain cells as opposed to normal cells, let's say from your skin or blood cells or muscle cells or something like that. And the reason is because brain cells are, oh, wait a minute. Let me mute someone. Okay. The reason is because brain cells are extremely energy sensitive. I'm sure you guys have heard that, the brain takes 20% of the body's it takes 20% of the body's calories, basically. That's true. The brain is a very energetically demanding organ, and it's a very energetically sensitive organ, meaning that there always needs to be some kind of energy source, whether it's carbohydrates or it's fat. Why they use brain cells? Okay, let's move on. Cells, let's say from your skin or blood cells. All right. What is the ketogenic diet? Let's answer that. Okay. So first, I want to encourage you guys to participate. What is the ketogenic diet to you? So in your understanding, go as crazy as you'd like, but just please type it in the chat. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to do that. Don't be shy. No sugar, no carbs, sad face. Yeah. Yeah. What else? Muscle building. Okay, that's a new one. Muscle building. I'm not sure. I think that depends on how much protein you're taking in. But I guess with a lot of ketogenic diets, there's a lot of protein, right? More than people are used to. But yeah, so the medical. Oh, wait, I'll just leave the answer open a little bit. Yeah, little carb and protein. Right, exactly. So I think it's around humans can get into ketosis by having, I think, around 20% or less of their diet consist of carbs. It's possible. Whereas mice, they need a crazy amount of fat to get into ketosis. Like they need 5% of their diet to consist of carbs to get into ketosis. So anyway, you guys are right. It's little carb, a lot of protein, but mostly you're eating fats. Mostly you're eating fats. And something to keep in mind is that all of us have body fat, right? That's not, and you know, some of us don't like our body fat. It's aesthetically not nice or whatever. But at the end of the day, think of it as your gas tank, sort of. You have literally, that's your fuel. You have stored fuel around your body. And it's because we can't always rely on carbohydrates, which are so fast burning, and you know they're very, I guess, temporary, or not temporary, but they burn quite quickly. Whereas fat, it's good for long-term storage. Okay, that is the ketogenic diet. Um, a lot of the foods that are in the ketogenic diet, they have very high fat and very high protein, typically, right? And so these are some examples: steak, you know, salad that doesn't have much sugar in it. There's some vegetables like I think pumpkin. I think it's okay for the ketogenic diet, but some like potato, that's not okay because it has a lot of carbohydrates. Avocado, it's mostly fat. Salmon, sausages, those are the foods you typically see, right? Anyway, so the primary source of energy in the body is carbohydrates. And basically, when you don't have carbohydrates in your system, your body turns to the fat cells, right? Just like I said, it turns to the gas or the fuel around your body that's stored around your body. And it basically it splits the fat cells into these three chemical groups. One is acetone, one is acetoacetic acid, and the third is beta hydroxybutyric acid, or we often say beta hydroxybutyrate. So, oh wait, let me go back. There it is. So I don't know if you guys have ever done keto, but there is something called the keto breath, and actually that's conferred by these chemical groups, and I think especially acetone. So when people that are in ketosis, they exhale into your face, which is not something you want to do now because of the coronavirus. But let's just say a year ago, um, you were around someone that was in ketosis, and they exhaled, and you could smell kind of like a chemically acetone smell. That's because they are in ketosis. So, and actually, they have these breathalyzer things that they sell to basically measure whether you are in ketosis or not. And those are legitimate devices. And basically, they measure the amount of these chemicals that are being exhaled from your breath. All right. So, there has to be some type of benefit to the ketogenic diet, and we'll get to that soon. But first, let's establish the rule. 75% of the bodies or of the human's diet should consist of fat if you want to get into a ketogenic state, right? If you want to, basically, you have two engines in your body. You have a carb burning engine, and then you have a fat burning engine. And to activate the fat burning engine, or to train it, what you'd want to do is have at least 75% of your diet consist of very healthy fats. And I'm not talking about highly, I guess, like trans fats or something like that. Trans fats are terrible for you. There's new research showing that saturated fats are not bad for you. Polyunsaturated fats are great, but it's really the trans fats that are terrible for you. So avoid those. Um, so anyway, just stick with this idea that there are two engines in the body, right? Anyway, we'll get into the paper soon, I promise, but we're just giving some context first. All right. So the ketogenic diet is not just a diet for weight loss. I said that in the beginning. And there are therapeutic roots in this. I told you that in the beginning, at the genesis of the ketogenic diet, it originated from, I think it was controlling epilepsy. So I think there was a team in the 20s, I believe, that studied epilepsy and found that if you put children on a diet mostly of fat and protein and no carbohydrates, a lot of them, their epilepsy would just totally disappear. Very strange. And it's not just epilepsy, it's also Alzheimer's disease. So there's something called the Bredison Protocol, and it's currently being trialed in the States to control the decline of Alzheimer's patients, right? So, and even in mouse models that are bred basically to have Alzheimer's, you can stop the mouse's Alzheimer's in its tracks, giving them a ketogenic diet. It's almost like the ketogenic diet rescues the mouse. And there's been a lot of talk about how Alzheimer's and dementia is actually type 3 diabetes. And so we won't get into that this talk, but basically the ketogenic diet is not just for weight loss, it's for Alzheimer's disease as well as obesity. So a lot of the problem with obesity is that the thing is with obesity is that fats are much more, I guess, they make you feel full much easier, right? So it's much easier to avoid bad foods like simple sugars and stuff on the ketogenic diet. And so it tackles obesity too. All right, what's the next one? Let me cover this. Okay, yeah, diabetes. Okay, so because you're not relying on sugar like carbohydrates to fuel your body, you are lowering the amount of circulating insulin. You're making your cells in your body more sensitive to insulin. So the ketogenic diet is wonderful for diabetics, type 2 diabetics that want to control their insulin levels and their blood sugar. The next thing is some types of cancer. So a lot of cancers, they actually have, so I don't know if you guys have ever gotten this done or if you know about this procedure, but basically a doctor will give you, to look at the cancer in your body, a doctor will give you a sugar, but it's like kind of like a radioactive sugar. You ingest it, you drink it, and then you have to go take a scan, right? And the scan will show the radioactive sugar. Where is it in the body? Where is it going to the body? And so if you have cancer, certain types of cancer, the radioactive sugar will go to the cancer and the cancer will light up like this, like a Christmas tree. And that's because some types of cancer use sugar primarily as their energy source. And they don't know how to use, those kinds of cancer don't know how to use fat as their energy source. So basically the ketogenic diet helps control some types of cancer, right? And so basically if you get off sugar and you get on the ketogenic diet, some of the cancers, they shrink or they stop growing. So it's really wonderful. Also acne. I'm not sure about the mechanism of why the ketogenic diet helps acne, but it does. There's a lot of trials about how it does that. Third, Parkinson's disease. So Parkinson's disease is a very complex disease. And basically it involves the death of certain brain cells, right? And we believe that the death of those brain cells is caused by something wrong with the energy, I guess, balance of those cells. Those cells don't know how to manage their energy, so they just die because they can't get enough of it. So, okay, something I want to tell you guys is that the ketogenic diet has something in common for helping all of these conditions. And it's that all of them are sort of related to energy balance, right? As I said, with Alzheimer's, energy balance, yeah, we'll get into that. But basically, all of these have to do with your mitochondria. Does everyone know what the mitochondria is? Type in the chat if you know what a mitochondria is. Just put a yes or no. No. Okay, we'll go over that. Yes, we got a yes, we got a no. Yes. Okay, cool. So the main question, I'll answer what a mitochondria is soon, but let me ask you guys the main question, the one we'll answer today. How does the ketogenic diet help these diseases and conditions, right? Right, as I said, there's no really established mechanism for how the ketogenic diet helps these conditions, and that's what these authors of this paper addressed, and that's what we're going to be talking about. Cool. So this is the mitochondria, and Walid, or this is directed to Walid. I know a lot of you guys know what mitochondria is, but basically here's a diagram of the cell. The mitochondria look like almost like little beans or worms, and they produce energy. They are the sole, or not one of the sole, I think they're the sole producer of energy in the body. And basically if you don't have very functional or healthy mitochondria, the cell dies, and very quickly. And remember I said that the people in this research paper, they used brain cells. So they looked at brain cells, but not just brain cells. They looked at the mitochondria of the brain cells to see how those cells would respond to stress and how their energy producers or their power stations of the mitochondria would respond to stress. So basically, the whole paper is analyzing the mechanism behind how the ketogenic diet works or affects mitochondria, right? That's the main thesis of the paper. All right. So, what do the authors do? I know this is kind of like the dry part for some people. Some of you might find it exciting, but basically, we're going to cover some methods as to what the authors actually use to investigate the central question. How does the ketogenic diet carry out its therapeutic mechanism, right? And one of the first and the most obvious, they used mice, and they actually used a mutant mice. And those mutant mice have a mutation in the brain. And so their brain cells aren't able to, the brain cells die quite quickly. Past like a certain age, they start dying very quickly and they're not very healthy. And it's because of their mitochondria. Their mitochondria are not very healthy. So basically, they want to give normal mice and then mutant mice this ketogenic diet and see what is the difference. Do they respond differently, right? And they didn't analyze the behavior of the mice. What they did was, it's kind of sad, but this is science. They killed the mice, they took the brain cells out of the mice, and then looked at it under a microscope and did some tests on each of the cells to see what is the difference, basically. What is the molecular difference in those cells? So basically, we're finding very, very high, we're seeing very, very high detail with this kind of testing. We're taking a model organism, giving it a ketogenic diet, and then we're looking very tiny at the very, very basic units of the mouse, which is the cell and the proteins. The second thing is they used electron microscopy, because if you want to look at mitochondria, you it's cool to use light microscopes, but electron microscopes allow you to see a lot more detail, right? And so this is a really cool technique. What they did was they took a bunch of gold particles, right? Just gold particles, and they tied those gold particles to the proteins that they want to look at. And so when the gold particles and the proteins interact, they touch, and when the electron microscope hits those proteins bound to both gold particles, it shows up as black dots. And actually, we're going to see that soon. And I'll explain the significance of all this later. But basically, just keep in mind the methods used are electron microscopy, normal and mutant mice, and then the third is something called an oxygen consumption analysis. So everyone's been running, right? I hope everyone's been running. I hope everyone's been keeping active, exercising. And if you don't exercise, at the very least, you've walked up some stairs and you've felt out of breath or something, right? What happens when you run? What happens when you exercise? Your breathing rate gets higher. You're exchanging more oxygen with the outside world. Your body is basically demanding more oxygen. And the reason is because your mitochondria are using that oxygen to make energy. And so when you exercise, you're telling your body to make more energy. I need more energy to move my muscles. And so your brain and your heart and et cetera, your lungs, they all work together to get oxygen to those cells that need energy, like your muscles. So the oxygen consumption analysis is really cool because basically it has you basically take some cells out of a mouse, you put it in a dish, and then you put it in this machine, and then it basically measures how much oxygen is being exchanged with those cells with the outside world. And basically, the more oxygen a cell is using, the healthier it is, right? If it's not using much oxygen, that means that the mitochondria are damaged. So that's, and if there's questions, you guys can feel free to just ask right now, and then I can talk about it. So let's move on, I guess. These are the methods that the authors used. All right, so don't be intimidated. This is a typical figure, because this is, after all, a biology journal club, and I want to show you exactly what the paper has. And this is an image that the paper has. So, and I'll explain it. So if you look at the top left right here, it says wild type. Wild type just means normal. It just means a normal mouse. And here's an image that we don't really know what it is, but there's an M right here. And that is actually the author's way of saying this is a mitochondria. This little gray body is a mitochondria, right? And in that mitochondria, there's a little black dot. And I'll explain what exactly that black dot is, what protein it is, but it is a protein and it's marked with a gold particle, right? So here's a bunch of cells and here's a bunch of black dots. And so look at this, all these different proteins are in different levels is what they're trying to say. So in this first column, this is a normal mouse. There's not many proteins in the mitochondria. In the second mouse, the mutated mouse fed a standard diet, so that when the mouse is fed a standard diet, it's fed just normal sugar and fats, just like a normal diet, basically a mouse would have, right? And there's some good black dots here, yeah. And then with a ketogenic diet, there's a lot more black dots. And they actually did an analysis of how many more black dots there was in the ketogenic diet mouse. And there were, I think, not twice as much, but there was quite a bit more. Anyway, we'll explain what the black dots are, I promise. But I just want to show you this really cool image. It's an electron microscope image. And it's showing these are literally proteins. These black dots are literally proteins in the mitochondria, right? So the black dots are actually a protein called, this is our first acronym of the day, UCP2. And UCP2, it doesn't really matter what it stands for, but I can tell you what it does. It helps take care of oxidative stress. So has anyone ever heard of antioxidants, right? From berries or food or whatever? Antioxidants are basically things that you eat or whatever. And actually your body makes antioxidants too, but antioxidants are exactly what they sound like. They're antioxidant. And oxidants can be oxygen, they can be hydroxide, they can be different chemicals that have that basically tear our cells apart. So an oxidant is not good for the cell. But the thing is, just by existing right now, you breathing, you're making oxidants, you're making oxidative stress on your body. And that's in fact what exercise is. Exercise is making your body better at handling oxidative stress. So too much oxidative stress is not good for the cell, and it actually kills the cell and kills the body. That's what we see in some conditions like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease or cancer, is that there's a lot of oxidative stress. There's a lot of damage to the body. And basically, there's no way to control it except with drugs or with therapies like the ketogenic diet. So if I go back a slide, let me go back a slide. These proteins, these are all called UCP2, and I'll tell you what they do now. So basically in the ketogenic diet, there's more UCP2 than normal. And UCP2 controls or it helps take care of oxidative stress. The more UCP2 that a mitochondria has, the better it is at surviving in stressful conditions that from oxygens and oxidative chemicals. So that's good. So basically the ketogenic diet is helping cells survive. Those mutant cells survive. It's helping them. So if you have questions, as I said, type in the chat. So what does this finding say? Does that finding say that the ketogenic diet may be helping these mutant brain cells stay alive? If they can deal with stress better, does it mean that they can stay alive longer? I mean, you would think, right? So the authors, they didn't show this. They didn't show that the cells could do better with this test. All they showed was that there's more proteins that might help it do better. But then they went to look at, okay, does this actually translate to cells doing better under stress, right? And actually, yeah, here's the question. Why do I say it may be helping with oxidative stress? And it's because the authors didn't do the test yet, but I'm going to show you that they did. Because this finding alone doesn't say that the brain cells can survive better under stress. It only says that there's the protein in the cell. It doesn't say that they can do better under stress yet. So what do the authors do? They do the oxygen consumption test, the stress test. So basically, the more oxygen consumed, the healthier the cell. And what the authors did was they gave a very stressful situation to the cells um, with hydrogen peroxide. So the cells that did not have the ketogenic diet and the cells that did have the ketogenic diet, they're basically comparing the stress resistance, right, with hydrogen peroxide. So let me explain exactly what they did. They have two groups of mice, one that's on the ketogenic diet, one that's not on the ketogenic diet. And they took the brain cells from each of those mice and they put it in a dish, and then they just put hydrogen peroxide in drops on top of the cells and just started looking at them to see what would happen. And so for the mice, or the cells that were not on the ketogenic diet, they actually had a lot of stress right here. Wait, I'll go over this soon. But basically, the oxygen consumption rate decreased quite a bit. And that says that the cells that were not receiving the ketogenic diet weren't doing so great with the added stress of the hydrogen peroxide, this chemical right here. So what does that mean? It says that, as I said, the cells are not doing great under stress. But the mice that were on the ketogenic diet and then were added this extra stress of hydrogen peroxide, they actually did much better. If you see this purple, compare this purple bar right here with the red one right here. This is a little bit higher, but for the consumption rate, it actually translates to quite a bit of difference. So it's saying that UCP protein that we were just talking about is helping the cells stay alive under stress. So, okay, yeah, sure, we saw under the microscope that there's more UCP protein, and it should help the cells survive under stress. Let's test it, and let's put hydrogen peroxide on it, and oh, look, it actually does help with stress. So that's basically what the authors did. Have I lost anyone? Like, do you guys want me to explain anything? I'll stop right now, and I will answer questions. Don't be afraid, because it is complicated. And I'm sorry if there's some acronyms that you're reading on the chart that you don't understand. Questions, comments, concerns? But does everyone get that basically the ketogenic diet is helping cells stay alive under stress? That's basically the idea that I want to communicate to you. Cool. Not complicated. Good. Great. Good news. Okay. So to summarize, more UCP2, which is those black dots, right, on the electron microscope, is helping the cells survive stressful situations. It's helping them. And the ketogenic diet is helping to increase UCP2 levels in mitochondria. So it's helping the cells stay alive, basically. That's basically all we've covered so far. Great. So now, but that doesn't cover everything, right? That doesn't cover why some of the ketogenic diet. So let me just word this properly. If the ketogenic diet, all it did was help your cells survive stressful situations, then we wouldn't see the rebound for that we see in Alzheimer's patients, Parkinson's patients, and stuff. When they get on the ketogenic diet, they actually improve. They don't just stop degrading. People with Alzheimer's, they don't just stop in their tracks and that's it, right? They actually get better. So something else is happening to mitochondria, something else. And that's what the authors are looking at next. What else could be happening to mitochondria that makes them function better with the ketogenic diet? Sure, okay, they're better off handling stress, but what else is happening? Is there a way to tell the molecular difference between cells? Absolutely. We wouldn't be biologists if we didn't have these techniques, right? And one of them, oh, this is actually a really cool picture. These are actual cells. They're not brain cells, but I think they're fibroblasts, meaning they're just normal cells in your skin or under your skin or whatever. And don't ignore the green. This is just like basically the cell skeleton, but the red are the mitochondria. The red are the energy producers of the cell. And look how widespread they are. They're everywhere. And there's a reason why they're everywhere. And they have a huge network and they're all connected and they're all big blobs. They're not just like in the image that I showed you, the graphic, they look like little beans, right? That's actually not true. They take many forms. They take little dots, they form little strings. And it's not important why they do that, but it is important to see that they are everywhere. And that's because there is energy requirement in this side of the cell. There's energy requirement on that side of the cell. There's a lot of energy requirement in this middle of the cell. That's why you see a lot of mitochondria here. Really cool image. Anyway, so back to the main question, which is what else is helping with, what else is the ketogenic diet doing to these mitochondria that is helping these conditions that we spoke about? Okay, so is anyone familiar with Western blotting? It's a technique called Western blotting. Has anyone heard it or done it? Anything like that? No. Okay, that's one. No. Two no's. Okay. Don't be intimidated by the picture or the graphs or whatever, or the acronyms. I'll explain everything. So if you look over here, so basically what a Western blot does, let me just pretend I'm a scientist, right? Let's say I have a petri dish, right? Here's my petri dish of cells, and these are my brain cells from the mouse. I want to do something with them. I want to look at the protein levels in those cells. How do I do that? Well, I take them off the dish, I mash them up, I kill them, and I basically make a cell cocktail. I make basically like a juice, right? A cell juice. Then I put a bunch of stuff in, and then I run it through a gel. So the gel actually has linkages like this inside. So the proteins kind of fall through the gel, right? And the heavier they are, the what is it? The heavier they are, they don't go that far in the gel. But the smaller they are, the smaller the proteins are, the farther they'll go in the gel. So basically, you put the cell cocktail in the gel, and then you basically get a filtration of proteins, right? It basically separates all proteins by size. That is what a Western blot is, and that's what we're looking at actually. These dark lines are proteins, and the thicker they are, basically that means the more protein there is, right? So remember that black dot, UCP? In the ketogenic diet, there seems to be a lot more UCP than normal. But also there's another protein that I'd like to draw your attention to. It's called PGC1 alpha. And you see in the ketogenic diet, there's a lot of PGC1 alpha. Here's the ketogenic diet, the mutant mouse with the ketogenic diet. Here's just the regular mouse, and here's the mutant mouse that has a problem with its mitochondria. In all of them, you see that, look at this. Here's the normal control mouse, right? It has that level of PGC1 alpha, but in the mutant mice, it seems to be gone, or it seems to be greatly diminished. And that explains why that mouse has trouble with its brain cells, because this protein is involved in making more mitochondria and keeping them very healthy. So PGC1 alpha, that's the second acronym of the day. It helps mitochondria survive. It helps them to make more of themselves, and it also helps them to conserve or produce more energy. So basically, it looks like that with the mutant mouse, the ketogenic diet is actually helping it so it could be normal. Funny, isn't it? Does everyone understand that? Yes? No, maybe? Cool. So basically, all this is saying is that there's more protein in the ketogenic diet mouse than the non-ketogenic diet mouse of this specific protein called PGC1 alpha that helps with mitochondria, like their health, and it helps make more mitochondria. And actually, this is shown in a graph. So if you look at here, there's a key. Wild type just means normal. This is the normal level of UCP, normal level of PGC1 alpha. Then here's the mutant one, produces a ton of UCP, but not enough to save it. And then for the ketogenic diet one, produces a ton of UCP, and it is enough to save it. And then over here, these are quite similar. Look at this, the control mouse versus the ketogenic diet mouse. They're quite similar. Whereas the mutant mouse that didn't receive the ketogenic diet is stuck without their PGC1 alpha very high. So that's not good. Okay, so what does PGC1 alpha help us with? It helps with energy. It helps preserve our energy powerhouses through old age. And remember I said that the ketogenic diet helps people with Alzheimer's. That's because, well, it's because now that we understand the ketogenic diet and what it does, we see that it improves the body's ability to make more mitochondria and to endure stress, which is exactly what Alzheimer's patients go through. If you look at Alzheimer's patients' brains, their mitochondria are not great. They have few mitochondria. They're not as energetically, I guess, robust as a young person. And they are very prone to stress. They can die very easily. The cells can die very easily because they don't have enough energy requirements, and they can't basically survive oxidative stress, right? So something to keep in mind. That's what PGC1 alpha helps us with. And that's actually one of the most important proteins that helps the ketogenic diet confer the effects that we're seeing. Also, PGC1 alpha helps with the creation of new blood vessels. So this is very important also with a lot of the disease that we spoke about, where there's a lack of blood flow and thus oxygen and energy that can basically be used to make energy, right? So that's something that PGC1 alpha helps us with. And it's very cool that the ketogenic diet increases this protein because it's extremely crucial to survival and to health. Cool. All right. So the conclusion of the paper, the whole sum of it is the ketogenic diet improves mitochondrial health compared to a normal diet with tons of carbs. And the ketogenic diet toughens the mitochondria from stressors, makes them more impervious to stress. So that's why, if I go back to that slide, I'll go back to it later in the discussion part. That's why the ketogenic diet has a therapeutic relevance to certain diseases, and that's why it's very important to basically to try it out, especially in old age. So guys, it's actually 6:45 and we've reached the end of our talk. I know it seemed very brief. I hope it seemed very brief and it was kind of, I hope it was informative to you. But if you guys have any questions regarding this, let me know. And also any questions about the ketogenic diet, I'll try to answer them myself. I'm not a medical doctor. Please don't take anything I say as medical advice, but I will try my best to basically shed light or put you in the right direction. So if you guys have questions, let me know. Yeah, I hope you guys gain something from it. So basically, in this biology journal club, we have covered the ketogenic diet, and we've covered now the molecular mechanism of the ketogenic diet, why it helps us. And this question was only answered in 2018. So only in the last 2 years do we know exactly why the ketogenic diet helps these diseases. So, cool. Does this diet help prevent having Alzheimer's? Okay. So I don't know if I think there was a study showing that the lower carb diet that you had, the less likely you have Alzheimer's. Um, and Alzheimer's is very complicated. It has many different subtypes. There's the frontotemporal Alzheimer's that starts in the front. There's another one that starts in the learning center of the brain called the hippocampus. There's all sorts of different types. And so I think the answer to that, NEG, is that it depends. I think that so if I can actually type in the chat something called the Bredison Protocol that you can read on your own time. And the Bredison Protocol is, so part of the Bredison Protocol is that it's a multifactorial approach to tackling Alzheimer's disease, right? Or actually halting Alzheimer's disease in its tracks. And so diet, the ketogenic diet is encouraged as part of the protocol. Exercise is another one. Socialization is another part of the protocol. Learning. What else? Oh, supplementation with certain vitamins is also part of the Bredison protocol. But yes, it might prevent. That's the answer. That it might prevent Alzheimer's. It might help it, I guess. But we don't know. There's still a lot of research that needs to be done. Okay. Everyone always talks about cholesterol levels in keto. Is there actual basis on that, or is it just random people talk? So I don't think I'm really qualified to talk about that. I know, though, that, so I'll tell you as just a civilian, not a scientist, not a doctor, I will say that I've heard stuff about LDL cholesterol being really high in people that do the ketogenic diet and carnivore diet. But I've heard that that's okay. And I'll tell you why. Their argument for why high LDL in those during those diets is good is because there is no sugar in the blood, right? So if, let's say, you're pre-diabetic and you have high LDL, that's not great, because what the sugar does is I think it'll do something to those LDL cholesterol particles and make them sticky, basically. So they'll stick around your blood vessels. Whereas if you have a low blood sugar, which is what you have on ketogenic diet, carnivore, and if you're not pre-diabetic or diabetic, then it's okay to have that free LDL, because then it won't become sticky from the sugar. So I think it's a little bit complicated, but I think that's okay. But as I said, I'm not qualified to make an exact statement. Okay, you mentioned it slows down cancer development. Can you please elaborate? Okay, yeah, like I said, it's not all cancers. Cancers are extremely varied in the type, and this is why we don't have a cure for cancer, right? There's no cure for all cancers. We have treatments, but we don't have a cure, because each one of them is very different, and also they're very personal. So some person could have a very different cancer from another one. We've been good at characterizing the different types of cancer out there, and like being able to predict how well they'd react to certain treatments. But at the end of the day, they're all very different. And the ketogenic diet does help slow down cancer growth. And I think it depends on the cancer, though, but it helps basically. It cuts off the energy supply of certain types of cancer. If the cancer doesn't learn how to burn fats, then it's dead, right? If it's relying solely on carbs. So that's what I mean, that it helps certain cancers. It helps slow the progression and division of certain cancers that rely primarily on carbohydrates. So I hope that answers your question. But not all cancers. All right. Any other questions? All right, guys. I'm on keto diet for 1 month now. I feel great, full of energy and good mood. Yes. I actually tried the carnivore diet last year for 2 months, and it felt amazing. It was a little bit extreme. That's why I got off of it, but it felt great. It felt great. So yeah, I encourage you guys to try it, but also consult with your doctor before trying it, before getting on it. As I said, I'm not a doctor. Okay, guys. All right. Well, everyone have a good night. I hope it was informative, and I hope you learned something.